Don Graham. John Ditmars,
Here.
David Lexi,
Here.
Mark Myers. Brian Baird,
Here.
Kevin Walls,
Present.
and Ron West.
Present.
We have a quorum, sir. We also will need to do a roll call vote for all of our motions that are made today.
Okay.
Okay,
All right, we got the roll call. We're done with approval. Does anybody approve the minutes of September 11th to 2023 meeting? Move to approve. Second. A motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. 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 All opposed, same sign.
and I need to do the roll call vote.
Oh, crap.
Sorry.
That's a legal term in the
It
minute.
is.
No crap.
It stands for some acronym I know somewhere.
Concern something. Ron West.
I
Brian
had
Baird.
to think about it.
I too.
Kevin Walls,
Aye.
John Ditmar, and
David.
David Lexi.
Aye.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Treasurer's report. He's feverishly working on it. Mr. Sherman.
Good afternoon. You have before you our check register from September 9th through November 6th.
Thank you.
I've got all the claims here. If there are any questions on the claims, I can get those for you.
Any questions from the board? David, you got any questions?
No.
No questions there.
You would
Move to approve by
please.
Brian Baird.
That'd be great.
Who was that the second?
Nobody yet.
No.
I did.
You did?
Ron West.
We'll call vote now.
Yeah. Roll call vote. Ron West,
I.
Brian Baird.
Hey.
Kevin Walls,
Aye.
John Ditmars,
Aye.
and David Lexi.
Aye.
Thank you. That was passed unanimously.
Okay.
That's all I have for you today.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Mr. Sherman.
You came to a good one, yeah.
CAC. Jesse.
Unfortunately, I was hoping that our usual CAC member would be able to make it, but she has now taken on multiple roles at IDEM. And so she was unavailable, but we will have our November 14th, or excuse me, our annual pitch-in on November 14th. Again, everybody's favorite meeting. And we've also been discussing more programs for next year. There are several things that, as you know, we have kind of gotten ourselves involved with different communities that we're hoping that maybe some of the CACs can, incorporate some of those programs, whether it be, I know that for instance, the Trafalgar Library has been getting more programs going. And so several of them actually live down in that area. So it'd be great if they could go out and help support with some of the programs that we know are coming up. So maybe around Earth Day, they would go down there and help with a library program so we could kind of spread ourselves across the community as we used to do before the vid took everybody out and changed everything around. So kind of getting back to what I guess you would say is normal. I am hoping to maybe see one or two more people join, but for the most part, we've had a wonderful group since I've been here at the district, and they continue to stay on. Now, Mark and Becky Appleton will be retiring. I've told them they can retire from any job they want, but they cannot retire from the CAC. So hopefully that will be the case. But that's their update.
Okay. If I get any questions? None seen. Thanks, Jesse. Let's roll into
So I'll
number
go
2,
ahead and-
director's report.
We, of course, had a wonderful stand-in for us for passing the budget. Is there anything that you want to say about the budget other than it passed?
Passed and had a good
Brian, can you
discussion
take
with
this for just a second?
council regarding the excess levy appeal in general and specifically to the recycling district. And all that was passed as presented. So you'll likely hear within the next month and a half from the DLGF as to whether that amount is granted.
I'm sitting in for chairman as he had to leave for a
Oh,
second. So
you're actually-
Go right ahead.
Okay, so yeah, so if you have any questions, but otherwise, you know, the budget did go through as presented, as usual, other than the fact that we were going for those established funds to try and help with some of the disaster debris cleanup. Everything else was pretty much status quo. We stayed within, of course, what the council's recommendations were for everything. So I don't believe that there was any problems, you know, and we're happy that we were able to get the assistance to move forward. I must say, and I mentioned this to the commissioner, that I get to work with Pat and Angela every day, but it's been wonderful too, to work with somebody else who works with the state on a regular basis, to be able to have some of the things clarified that I don't always have the answer to. So I like to be informed, and so it's nice to be able to have a resource to be able to be informed. So anyways, thank you very much. I did get a chance to go visit Shelby County's recycling center. Carla and I went on their, well, I guess it was grand opening, but then they opened the next day. So
Halloween.
yes, on Halloween. And we, Commissioner Waltz had asked us to visit, see what we liked, what we didn't like. And I asked Lisa herself, I'm like, if you had the opportunity to change anything, you know, what would it be? And so, you know, we took a couple of notes. Obviously, it's a great system, and I'm just going to say it's a great system because they had come to us ahead of time, a few years ago, and said, if you were building something, what would you want? Knowing we were trying to open and establish, and we were using the footprint that we had. So of course, a lot of it was the things that we would be looking for. I know she's looking to establish a few more sustainable environmental, initiatives there that will still come into pass, that I would hope we would incorporate when we're thinking about our building as well, knowing that this is a building for the future and not just for today. But otherwise, there was very little that we would see, certainly everything within the same footprint that was already there. She has a great system, and I think it'll be fantastic for them. The only difference is, as we've mentioned many times, is that they are, of course, down with the highway department, and they have several different organizations. It's also their transfer station. So they're going to have a lot more going on, obviously, than we do. So they have, scales and all of that available to them. So that's, from my standpoint, that's kind of cool, because you can always measure weights. Not something I'm ever thinking about, but I'm just saying, putting it out there, knowing what they have available to them. So maybe some of their resources will be obviously a little different than what we have available to us, but just a great center to begin with. And they are starting out by utilizing a company to staff their facility, because they obviously don't know what it's going to look like, because they've never had a staff facility. We do know what it's going to look like. Well, at least what we have now, we know what it's going to look like, and hopefully it will only grow from there. So we don't necessarily have those same concerns that they do, but I noticed there's been some things going around, and that is one of the reasons why they are utilizing an outside organization to actually staff, because they don't have part-time people the way that we do. They've just pretty much always had admin staff within their programs. So they are using Caldwell Environmental to run their facility as far as collection goes, which will obviously be different than what we do. But otherwise, I'm happy to answer any questions, but obviously I would expect that as we further the discussion about buildings, we would, I intend to put a little memo to you on just a few of the things that we noticed, and go from there.
Okay.
So by all means, if there's any questions, I'm happy to answer them. And I do know that I think they opened the next day. So I believe that they are up and running to the public. So I do want to bring Stephen back when we once again have been going up and down with staff, but we've got a few new ones coming in. And so when he's available, I'd like to run him out there so that he can see it, because obviously he works every day back there, and some of the things that I know or I'm aware of, he might see a little bit differently. But otherwise, I think it was great. So,
Who built that facility, Jesse or?
Runabout.
Armand did?
Mhm. Yeah. And with that, we have seen a recycling uptick, which has been fantastic. We knew we would. I mentioned it before, the yellow and green bins, but it just seems like, I don't know. I know a lot of people like to hold their stuff in their garages or wherever, and then they make one massive, run. And so it just seems like the past, I don't know, 2.5 weeks, we have been getting more newspaper, magazine, yada, yada, phone calls. Of course, you have, everybody's getting their Christmas stuff out. So people are getting more catalogs and things that they don't normally always have. So we have definitely seen an increase, coming through the facility, which we're thrilled with. We are seeing more cardboard pickups come through. And again, these are the things as we're talking about the building. I know we've talked about a vehicle on and off. A box truck is going to be a must. We cannot continue to do what we're doing in the van. We are almost every day having businesses calling us, asking if we can come get them. Steven does the best that he can while also covering the back. We jump in and cover and help. That's great. But if we had a truck that could just gather it all at once and we wouldn't have to keep running back and forth, we would be doing much better. So I hope as we, move forward and we are talking about those things, we keep in mind, the true need and the growth that we can see from it. I mean, we really can. We can really help more than just Franklin and some of the places in Whiteland. We can grow into Greenwood now that those small businesses are open downtown. When we get those phone calls, we try the best and we say, if you have a way to bring it to us, by all means, bring it to us on a Thursday. We'll open the doors to you. The food pantry. The food pantry is now trying, we told them we would try it and do the best that we can, but 3 to 6 Gaylords a week, that is a lot of cardboard on top of all the other things that we do, especially since we are just a few people manually putting it in the baler. So there is certainly room for growth there, with just the general population that may not have access that, again, a huge industry should have access to. And we're seeing it and we're trying to help it as best we can. But we also, we have to, of course, put limits and we have to make people understand that we just can't be at your beck and call to come pick up your cardboard. So we're trying to work on that a little bit as well. But it is definitely growing and we're happy for that. But that brings back in, we had talked about the fact that these green and yellow bins are gone. We keep referring to them to Abitibi, but they honestly haven't been Abitibi for a long time. But we found out that Center Grove schools, and this came about because I kept receiving many phone calls from Center Grove from teachers that were very upset that they couldn't recycle in their classrooms. They actually have recycling available to them with a bin at their schools. Their bins are filled already by what the custodians are capturing, whether it be through the food services or cardboard or whatever. So I have done the math to find out how much it would be probably for the entire county, and the math works as far as what we used to pay for drop-offs and different things. It's probably about half, well under half of that. Problem is I can't give you an exact number because I don't know who exactly would provide this service. As we know, I can get estimates, but I don't know who would exactly provide this service. But I would like the opportunity to approach Center Grove to begin with, to find out what it would cost for each of those schools to have an additional pickup a week, since they already have the recycling bin there and the program in place, so that we could at least get recycling back at Center Grove schools and then work our way to try and hopefully provide recycling back at all the schools within the county. So what say you?
Just on the box truck, what size are you contemplating? I mean,
One that doesn't require a CDL, although
yeah,
Stephen does have it,
16,000, I think, is
Yeah.
the threshold on a CDL, anything above 16,000.
Yeah.
Do you need a lift gate?
absolutely, because we have our dolly that we can
Yeah,
push on
okay.
there. So, yep, just a basic lift gate and truck, and we will be very, very happy people.
Yeah, yeah.
Does Center Grove pay to have the bins
They do. So,
now?
yes, so I was going to, because this board has allowed me to, of course, give back in a smaller number than what we're probably talking about to the schools. So I was going to work with one of the schools and kind of use it as a, here's what we can do, here's what it looks like, here's where the money is. Well, the problem is that Center Grove is not inclined to let only one school have the opportunity, even if it was a pilot program. So,
They want them all?
right. And we're talking 9 schools, and one pickup for 9 schools. I mean, honestly, it's probably a lot less expensive than we think it is. I mean, even if it was $80 a pickup, 80 times 9, I mean, it's well within our budget to be able to do that and ensure that that material is being collected. And as part of the education that we try and offer those schools and those kids. But obviously. I can't in good conscience say, well, we can do it for Center Grove, but because they already have that there, but then I wouldn't try for the other schools because they don't have anything. Well, obviously, I would want to see all the schools.
Why don't you just set it up on a 6-month trial basis with Center Grove?
Okay.
You're done with it. It's your trial basis.
Yeah, through the end of that's what I was saying, through the end of the school year. And then,
That would be my recommendation. Give it a shot at least. Do something.
Who does the pickup?
it's Rumpke.
Rumpke.
And we have a very good relationship. Ironically, the one time they are not in the the room.
So they pick it up, bring it to you, the cardboard, or?
No, this would be their commingled recycling.
Oh, okay.
No. No, they've opened a new site down in Monroe County. They are definitely trying to move forward and trying to increase their footprint with recycling. But Rumpke has had Center Grove schools for years. I don't know how long, but as long as I've known, it was either Ray's or Rumpke up at Center Grove schools. So
I guess I'm missing something here. So how would you be involved in that? I mean,
I would pay, the district would pay for the additional pickup so that the students could actually be recycling the materials that are currently in their classroom that aren't getting recycled because their bin is so filled by the other material that is collected at the schools. So the recycling clubs that all existed because they all use those green and yellow bins
yeah,
don't exist in the same way anymore because they have no way of recycling their materials. We've been getting phone calls about this and I knew we would, for the past 2.5 months. And I had one very, very, very dedicated teacher from Center Grove, which is what made me say, okay, I wanted to send out this email or this letter in January, seeing what schools were interested in. Let me try starting with your school. And that is when I found out that they would not allow just the one school to have that in place.
Jesse, is this revenue neutral? In other words, are you getting paid for this or is there gonna be a cost associated with this? How
Oh,
does
no,
it work?
cost.
It's all cost, right?
Yeah. For us, though, it's the education, it's the promotion of
So that's the
recycling.
benefit of it, right?
Yes, yeah, I mean,
I just asked if there was gonna be a fee charged and I thought the answer to that was yes, but.
there is, that's what I'm saying, it's only gonna
On
cost
us.
us, we're not, yes,
The fee's on us, not the
not the school.
school, thank you.
Right, yeah, so. I will say Center Grove is probably more proactive in their desire for recycling because they already have these bins in place, which I have to be honest, we had no idea and we've called many times. And so we found out that they truly do have commingled bins at each of the schools, but then we also found out that it was mainly the custodians that were utilizing them. And if I had to put my recycling cap on, knowing what I know about schools, it's probably being filled with cardboard boxes that aren't broken down.
Well, let me ask you this, I'm inclined to agree with Commissioner Walls on the recommendation to go through the end of the school year.
Sure.
But my question is, what defines success on the pilot program?
For me, it would be, will be able to see the materials that are in there. And what my one caveat was, it could not just be paper recycling. It had to be true single stream. So they had to work to find a way to capture their plastics and their cans that they are not currently doing. So we would audit, we would go through, we would educate, we would, work with these environmental clubs to make sure that the right materials are truly being collected. And then we can have weights at the end because Rumpke can provide us.
And you
with
have
that.
the resources to do that?
Yeah, yep.
And capacity to do that. I
Yeah,
presume.
that would be, that would be our commitment as, myself going into the environmental club, making sure, working with them on whatever Tuesday afternoon they already meet or, so yes, we do. And then Rumpke would be able to give us the weights to know, and we'd be able to have pictures of the materials, but let's face it, the majority of what comes out of a school is recyclable. And so the fact that these materials are going to the trash, when it could really be going to recycling just because of space, because that's really what we're.
Like I said, it seems to me like there ought to be a metric, and it sounds like you'll have one that you can
Yep.
basically say, we're gonna hit it or not, and if we don't, it's kind of like, hey, we gave it a shot, it didn't work, or it does. And
Sure.
that's what will drive whether or not you move forward with this on a more permanent basis with the school, is that right?
Yes, I mean, my initial, I always hate to put weights down because weights and recycling are very difficult, but for me, it would be knowing that all of the schools in Center Grove are truly actively utilizing this bin in the way that they are supposed to. So because if one school collects all their cans, that weight's going to be much greater than if one school collected all their plastic. So I do have to, And I also have to hope that Rumpke will give me the total and not just, because in Indiana, everything is proprietary. And so I have to hope that they'll give me the totals of both bins, their true pickups, and not just the one that we're paying for. But I will be able to visually and report back, certainly numbers and information.
In the interest of fair disclosure, I think you folks know, I represent Center Grove on things that don't pay well. And I would think it would be important, Jesse, if you're gonna make this towards the educational component, like we used to have an education coordinator
Mhm.
that spent pre-COVID all their time in the schools. If it's the goal towards education with the students and the recycling clubs that are there, and I know they are very active and they used to have the newspaper bins and things. I think it would be critical in your interlocal agreement to have a provision in there that it is limited for the students' use on your programs and furtherance, because with the number of contractors that we have up there on any given time, it will end up being an extra contractor's bin,
Well,
extra, and you'll have,
so
to-
I did.
you have to nail that down, because
Yeah. And I
I know
that
what
was-
happens.
In the conversation with the person that oversees the whole program, my two things were, it's a commingle bin. My second one was that it's placed exactly next to the school bin. If they place it anyplace else, I would not be able to provide that service. But in this way, they're not even placing a new bin. They're just getting an extra pull.
But I'm telling you, it will be used by the contractor.
No, these bins are the ones that they are already using back in their, like by their back door. These bins aren't
Right.
out to the public.
To which I see contractors and citizens pulling up every week, open them up and throwing the things. So it's somehow, I'm just telling, just as a caveat, it's a great idea,
Yeah.
but
It
I
need to
can
be a
see it not,
secured loop
it has
located.
gonna,
Right.
gonna happen.
And I did put that in there. I just don't know. I don't know if they have theirs behind gates. I don't know. I just said it can't be in front like an Abitibi bin used to be for general public. We absolutely will not condone that because we know what goes in there.
Can you work on both those things, Lynn?
Probably not, because
what I-
I can tell you, my concern sitting here
It doesn't change.
to you is it will simply be one pull you'll be paying for St. Rich
Be
School
right back
Corporation,
in the same mess. we
That's
were
correct.
before.
unless it is somehow limited in terms of
You
its
don't need
use.
attorneys that might be willing to breach that subject?
I don't know if I'm
I-
sitting next to one, he probably has one in his office.
You were just coming up for
Yeah,
something.
or you may have someone young, it shouldn't be that hard, either whether you supply a lock on it, or I know you only wanted to have one additional bin, but you're gonna have to, I'm telling you, you're gonna have to do something.
No, there's no additional bin. This bin is
Well, I
already there.
mean,
So
one
we'll
additional-
find out if it's a locked bin. We have locked bins.
One
So-
additional pull is what you're
Yeah.
gonna do, but it's
Right.
just, they're gonna use it like they do now, they're
I
just
know.
gonna get one more pull. for the
Contractors
district
are
pay.
terrible.
Yeah.
Aren't
You
they?
really are. I wish we could educate some of those contractors.
But anyway, just a
But I agree with. what
great
you said.
idea, but no good deed goes unpunished.
Mhm.
So what's the frequency of pickup?
They get picked up. They currently get picked up once a week.
And if you were gonna do that, $80 times 9, you're just under $3,000 a month.
Mhm.
But the point is that $3,000 a month may be spent on
Debris.
contractors and debris and public and.
If I go and I look at the bin and it is not being utilized the way it is, I mean, if this is just a trial, we can say this is not going to work. This isn't what this is for.
Why don't
I
you do
mean,
this, Jesse? We'll give you the opportunity for the next couple of weeks to actually go survey the sites.
Okay,
Look at them, see where they're at, see if they're in secured locations. If they're not, try to work with the school to get them secured locations or some type of locking mechanism on the bins that we can do.
Okay.
And then just, you can send it back to email to us.
just email
or We can
everybody.
wait till the next, we can wait till the next meeting and do it. So,
I just want to be able to get out the letter, because if we're gonna do it through the end of the school year, which I'm completely, like, I think that's a great idea. It gives them the opportunity to see, and we can look at numbers, because I would like, if this is successful, to look at what this is like at other schools,
Mhm.
you
oh
know?
yeah, we'll progress as it goes. So why don't you just report back to the board, probably the next meeting, and just let us know if they're all secured, because it's gonna take a while to get to different principles.
Yes, that is the
Everyone.
biggest, that's why
So
I
let's work
started
on
this
that.
conversation now.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That's that one.
Okay, so it is America Recycles Day month. Of course, November 15th is always America Recycles Day. We have been collecting coats for the Coats for Kids program. We always do a little giveaway, and this year what we're also going to do is, because we don't currently take in plastic bags, We are going to collect plastic bags for the food pantry. So people can come and they can bring us 10, 20 bags for the food pantry for that week that we are open. And we will then take those bags over to the food pantry so that they have them for the holidays, because this is of course their most utilized time, and they don't get their bags and boxes back. We already provide them with boxes on a regular basis. So we thought, well, this is an easy way to add to that for them. We of course won't do it regularly because that becomes a bigger issue. But we are being, specific, and please make sure the bags don't have holes, they're reusable, that sort of thing. And then if you do that, then we'll give you a reusable bag back. Several districts have done that, but being able to give them back to the food pantry instead of us trying to figure out a way to recycle them, I think is a great win-win for the program. So that's what we are going to do. And also, Commissioner West had asked me, we had a wonderful shred day. I do not have the numbers yet because it just happened on Saturday, but we were full from, certainly we were nonstop from 9 to about 11.
People started arriving around.
Yeah. So 9 to 11, we were pretty nonstop, and then always that last hour. I mean, still busy, but get a little breathing room. We love doing it. The residents love it. So it works. We actually did have, what was it, Edmonds that came this time with 3 pickups?
Edmonds RV.
Edmonds RV.
From Edinburgh, they had 3 pickup truckloads of shredding.
And thankfully they had 3 strong people to help us with that because it was a lot. We love doing that. And of course the community loves it too. So we intend
Did
to,
you use Pro Shred? Is that who you use? Or-
no, we use shares out of Shelbyville. We do not shred on site. They lock them up and they bring them back.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Cause if they shredded on site, we could never do businesses and all of that. You'd never
Yeah.
get through the.
So they shred it
the
and
box.
bring the material back?
They shred all, they handle everything over there, and they're secure. I mean, the county uses them, the state uses them, so
What do they charge for that?
nothing.
Nothing,
We've had this relationship for 20 years.
really?
Mhm.
That's a good deal.
We're very blessed.
I'm sure shares would take an in-kind donation though.
They would, yeah. And if somebody does try and give us money, because there are a few people that do try and give us money as they come through, we send them right over to the sheriff's truck and say, please, if you'd like to make a donation, go right ahead.
Yeah.
Kenny's worked with sheriffs for eternity. So he's, again, they're great. We love working with them. It's a great
Yeah.
program, so. And I think last but not least, my goodness, I think you should have all gotten a copy of the holiday hours update for 2023. As I mentioned, we did change around. So Stephen was off today so that we could open the center tomorrow. We are adding 2 Thursdays. We just tried to figure out a way that we weren't closed for like 2.5 weeks, not only for the public, but also for our employees, because we do have part-time employees. So we were able to make that work by changing up some of the days that we actually took off for the holiday. And I think you had a copy of all that. So,
Anybody got any
and-
questions?
and in case anybody asks, because it was funny, because one of the county employees asked, December 21st and 28th is listed under holiday hours as open, because we're not normally open on Thursdays. And so we are going to open those 2 Thursdays. So I don't know if they thought that maybe they were missing some holidays out there, but that's why we put them on there, because we're not normally open. So.
Any questions from the board?
All
Nope.
right, thank
All
you.
right, thanks, Jesse. Legal report.
Thank you, sir. The first one is just an update. As you recall, when we purchased the property upon which our building is going to be built, it was zoned appropriately for building if we obtained a special exception from the city of Franklin. Commissioner Walls appeared before the city of Franklin BZA a year ago this time, and was granted the special exception. City of Franklin ordinances, like most of your ordinances, subdivision control ordinances and various entities usually have a 1-year period that if you don't do something on your special exception, it lapses. Obviously, we needed a 3-year period of time. Understanding I represent the city of Franklin too, I didn't feel it too inappropriate to simply reach out to them and ask if they could give us an administrative review on that requirement. They wrote us back an email and said they were fine with extending the special exception without any further action. what to the 3-year period that we needed that. So that is on file and I have that email for our records for that. The second thing is a little bit more meatier and I bring it to you not because we have an issue with it, but and hopefully to avoid an issue. Roughly 10 years ago or so, and it could be even longer than that, because I don't even remember who the board members were at the time. Wanted to know, a question was raised is, do we have an employee manual? And we didn't. And that was the question that I raised, I think at that point in time, about should we create one? What resources do you want to dedicate to it? So on and so forth. And the board essentially said, let's just follow the Johnson County Employee Manual with regard to times and holidays and days off and things of that nature. Which was fine, since we have a two employee department with full-time employees. We've kind of been able to just navigate through it, but I have to tell you, most of the employee manual for the Johnson County employees doesn't translate into our employees. So for instance, if we have an employee that needs to take time off work because of a medical condition other than FMLA, the Johnson County Employee Manual, you all have, and I have copies for you if you want them. You all have what they call a salary continuation plan for the county employees. And they use their paid leave over a staggered period of time. And then if they don't have any more time left for up to 26 weeks, you pay them 70% out of a fund that you've created. Well, obviously, Johnson County Solid Waste doesn't have those types of funds. And so that's just kind of an example. And before we ever get into a circumstance where we're kind of playing it by ear, if you will, it may behoove us to start taking a look at what would we do with regard to those kinds of things. Your employee manual is roughly, let's see, I pulled it out, 96 pages long. Probably not all that applicable to a 2-member department. And a lot of it just simply can't be applicable because they're not full-time employees of the county, because you're a separate taxing district. And so they're not eligible. So I guess I bring this to you and say, what is your desire? Should we create something with regard to times and days off and, that mirrors maybe what the county does or what another city does, or, I mean, because we're our own individual board, but I think we need to have something in place in the event something happens to one of our 2 employees, or, if we have any ones in the future. So with that, I'm looking, I guess, for some direction. And since
Well,
we only meet
one, when you stated that the 70% compensation package for that remainder of that 26
Right.
week period, you do have those funds there. Your budget's set, you've basically appropriated the funds through the salaries, so you would, in essence, you should have those funds available.
Yeah, and I don't think it would, you're absolutely right. And quite frankly, that makes sense, but that's not how it works under this, because what you folks do for the county is you have a collective pool that doesn't come out of any department's budget. And that's what the continuation plan is that you have at the county. I mean, it is actually funded by under the salary continuum, full-time, regular, including exempt and non-exempts, have salary continuation benefits for a fund that you all have created. Well, our employees are not members of that fund.
Right.
Could you go ahead and pay your employees 70% after that, after they've used all the time? Sure, because quite frankly, you've already got your salary built in. But I don't think that's something that I should make that determination. It's probably a board determination, because technically they couldn't get it. There is no fund setting aside. Now, if you all said, go ahead and continue to pay them. Okay, but it's a conversation maybe we would have. Yeah,
Pat?
you could pay them.
Yeah, the issue with that would be that we certainly budgeted for that particular employee, but we're still a 2-employee office. We have to get someone part-time to come in and backfill that position. So
Yeah.
we may not have that in the plan.
Right,
I
and
understand what you're saying, Martha.
yeah,
We still may need some additional funds if someone's out for that extended period of time.
that basically, I was just addressing what Lynn said, is having the funds available to pay that 70% for whatever period of time remains. As far as additional wages or salary monies for part-time employees or whoever you need to make up the difference while they're off. And then that'd be something you'd have to do with a rainy day fund or however you want to do it. You could set something aside. I wouldn't set it aside and have it compound though. I just pick a number that might be reasonable and it just revert every year.
I think if you had a general overall policy, to the extent you're asking my opinion, if you had a general overall policy, when you have such a small group, for instance, you could have a light duty policy like you do. And so depending on the nature of the illness, if something happens and you have someone who could work from home, manning the
Yeah.
phones, that kind of stuff, then paying the 70%, then maybe the other one doesn't have to pick it up. So we probably need some flexibility there. But
Yeah.
if you don't have something in place, we're all kind of running around wondering what to do.
Personally, I think you should just maybe write something up.
Okay.
And I apologize, ours being 90+ pages, it's
Crazy.
because some lawyers wrote that thing. No,
God love
no
'em.
aspersions
God love
last year, but, you know, getting paid by the word. You could probably write something up and cover it in about 2 pages.
That's
Well,
right.
we've always had a separate, kind of an appendix, like, because we do have certain things, and when you vote on them, I go in and I change them in the appendix, so I
Right.
would imagine we would add that to our appendix, however, then.
And with your approval or just direction is what I'm looking at. I just didn't want to do something and bring it to
Yeah.
you. I just kind of get a sense, but depending on what the circumstances are, it just isn't applicable.
What,
And-
what are the range of cost to like
Oh.
to have your own handbook? What
For me,
would the range of cost be to write a handbook for what they're asking?
oh, I mean, I just charge my hourly rate and I don't think I've ever hit the $5,000 budget you guys have ever done. Probably will this year
Well,
because, but it won't be much.
Now, the issue would be compounded if you get a vehicle. Like we just did a 9-page
Yeah.
addition to our handbook over vehicles. So once you get a vehicle, it's
Yes,
a
we have
little
a
bit more
vehicle. We have
complicated.
a vehicle policy. I mean, it's just I mean,
I think if you consolidate it all together, put it in
Yeah.
one policy.
narrow it down and
I think Commissioner West would probably be willing to step in there and help you put that thing together.
Oh, I would, yeah, no problem.
I think the only thing, like, we've had, I mean, we come to you with pretty much anything, and this was. In all of that, I think that everything is. Somewhat, maybe we could figure
Yeah,
out, but this
yeah.
is the one he just specifically said. The commissioners, you know, if
Yeah.
we don't have that, you
Yeah,
know.
my point was going to be the relevant cost to what it would take to make a handbook that fits that. I guess more sufficiently, I think the cost would be irrelevant. Compared to the advantage that it would have, was
Thank you.
what I was trying to get
okay,
at, but.
thank you. Yeah, we will keep it that way.
Make a motion.
I'd move that we have Lynn go ahead and put I wouldn't call it a handbook policy together.
Okay,
Handbook sounds like that's pretty aggressive.
Yeah.
Policy together that addresses some of the issues that are not well defined.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Roll call vote, please.
Well done.
I want to make sure I know what the motion is exactly. So the motion is
for me
for,
to put together a
for
draft
Lynn to put together a draft.
employee policy for review by the full board.
Perfect, thank you.
That's what I heard the motion.
That's
be.
exactly what it
Yeah.
was.
That's what I thought I heard. I just wanted to confirm it.
Thought correctly.
Thank you.
And we can get back on the recordings if we need to clarify that.
Mr. West,
Yes.
Mr. Baird,
Yes,
Mr. Walls,
Yes.
Mr. Ditmars,
Yes.
Mr. Lexi.
Aye.
Thank you. We have a unanimous vote.
Is that it from the legal side?
Yes, sir. Thank you for
All
your
right,
indulgence.
thank you.
Well, until,
For bringing
the
that
18th.
to our attention.
you're welcome.
Old business, which it might be old business, is a new building. Okay, some things have transpired since the last meeting. We have actually got a budget from the architect. And it came in at 2.8 million. So. So we sent those into a different arena. So.
2.8.
And I don't know how, it's not going to exceed that, but I just don't know. He's just pulling that number and saying that was square footage and dirt work and.
That's all. in.
Utility
Yeah.
hookups, that's all in. So. So. That brings us to a financing question.
Would you like me to remind the board that some of the field that we're in and the questions we're addressing?
I met with Bill last week and we talked about this in depth. Talked to Mr. Dittmers about it. So I think I'll let you take over now, Bill, and just kind of give a general overview of where we're at and what we can do with Mr. Peters' influx here. I'm sure everybody's gonna have a time at the podium. You could have stayed sitting down there if you want.
No, that's okay. It's good to stand.
Need to move around a little bit. I saw you yawning earlier.
So, recall that the discussion we had at your last meeting was about the possibility of financing through a loan rather than through a bonding process. And the cap for a single governmental unit under this set of statutes that we'd be looking at to borrow is 2 million. Two entities together through an interlocal agreement can borrow up to 3 million. Now I'll come back to the interlocal agreement and sort of the issues that surround that. But the real kicker is that the maximum amortization period is 10 years.
Really?
Yeah. And that's the challenge.
Can that be,
But-
can you do an arm, a 10-year arm where you could redo another 10 with an adjustment? No,
Mhm.
no, just 10 years
Yeah.
max.
10 and pay it back.
Hmm.
And then as to the interlocal, you have a couple of sets of questions. First, who would be the partner agency or the partner entity, the partner unit? And second, what would the split be? Now, there's a case to be made that the legislation, because the statutes are silent, don't mandate what the split is. In other words, that entity number one, the recycling district, could increase its $2 million cap by bringing in a second party. That's an open question. So if 2.8 is a hard number, the worst case, if you would, is finding somebody who would pay 800 along with you. The best case would be somebody who would pay considerably less and you'd pay a larger share of that 2.8. It's not tested.
Hey, Bill.
But regardless of where you end, you're still at 10 years. Sorry, yes, Ron.
Well, if 3 million was the cap, and I'm just gonna throw this out as a hypothetical, let's say the county partnered with the recycling district, and we took on 200,000 of that. As you said, it didn't really speak to the percent, and then as soon as the loan was consummated, we just merely give the 200,000, pay the loan down by 200,000 and move forward. So we would be in for 2, we just pay it right back to the lending institution.
I haven't tried to run the amortization on 2.6, and I'm sure Mr. Peters hasn't either for 10 years. But that'd be the.
Obviously, the
Can we compare it?
2.8 for 10 years.
And
That's aggressive.
with all due respect to the architects that Commissioner Walls has talked to, we all know 2.8 on paper today is not 2.8 when the door opens. Whether through soft costs or inflation or anything else, it's not 2.8, it's over 3.
I don't know if we can
Yeah,
carry
you're right.
Yeah, I don't know if we can carry that debt service.
Huh?
We couldn't carry that debt service over 10 years.
No, not over
it's
10 years.
impossible.
Oh, I'm not supposed to comment.
You're just public comment, public
I
comment,
was a public comment.
your public comment section.
My apologies.
So you see the dilemma we're at. Or do we go through the
Well,
bonding process?
what kind of building? Is it a steel,
Be a clear span steel.
clear span steel?
Few offices, bathrooms, utilities, driveways, parking lot, our water retention. A lot of site work because it is rolling.
They can do at least
So-
2 days.
Now the question lies. It almost sounds like, I'm gonna speak out loud, conventional financing's out of the picture. Because with the 10-year amortization, it's impossible. We can't carry it. So-
Minimum 20, I think.
Your thoughts?
That's a big number, 2 million.
Yeah.
So. It's gotta be
And how many
stretched
square
to-
feet are we talking here on this building?
It's like 10,000. You were complaining about furniture this morning. You got a laugh, Ron.
That's what it is. Wow.
It really, it boggles my mind. When I think about that building we just missed for 1.6.
I know.
We should have bought it.
Yeah, well, we would have if they sold it the day before we went back.
Yep, that would have been a perfect building.
Yeah.
It would be in it, be operating right now. And it was like 20,000 square feet. But. Que sera, that's history. Mr.
So-
Peters, you want to kick in here a little bit and kind of give us some
Yeah.
advice?
Kind of, assuming that, we are beyond the amounts of the public works loan. Your alternatives are to pursue bonding. You have kind of 2 types that you can go through. One is general obligation bonding, the other is lease rental financing. Because you have such a small amount of debt based on your $10 billion tax base. And you don't have plans for other projects, I think the general obligation bond process will be fine for you. You don't have to go through the extent of a lease rental where you're preserving bond cap. As you do that, again, we talked about this last time, your commitment of general obligation bond cap for the solid waste district does not impair the counties at all. They're separate. You both have separate lease rental abilities as well. And so, yeah, this will not impact anything on the county side. This is for you only as the solid waste district. Because of your revenue streams, you don't really have any revenue source outside of property tax. So you will incur the debt, pay it back with a property tax levy, like you do your general obligation bonds that you go through every year. That is also a good thing because that is your best security that you have. In Johnson County, because this is going to be the same tax base, it's going to rate at AA or above. So it will sell well. You can amortize it out to a 20-year bond, which based on the timing of where we're at today, that's going to give you about 19 years of amortization if you want to do it across 20. And we did go through some examples last time at, I think the highest one I had was 3.135 million as an estimate, including some of the soft costs, because one of the soft costs that's not in there is if you borrow the money early in 24, the first tax levy we're going to get for you to make a repayment is going to be June of 25. So we're going to have to make at least one capitalized interest payment, if not 2, during the construction period. But if we were at 3.135 million, I would estimate at 19 years, annual debt service would be about $218,000. The tax rate would be about 0.0020. And I think your current operating tax rate for 23 is like is it 006? Something around there. So it's about a third, which, sounds a lot, but your operating levy is so small. And again, that 0.002 tax rate on a $300,000 homestead is only about $3.33 for the whole year. For a $500,000 homestead, it's still under $6. That would be equivalent to about a $300,000 commercial property with no credits. about $6 for the year. So it's not a large amount. At this point in time, I would tell you, you can shorten that period. You could shorten it to that 10-year period if you want. And that makes the rate go higher. The interest would be a little bit less. The impact to each of the households would be a little bit more. Like I say, the maximum you can go to would be the 20. I would also recommend to you at this point in time, and what we're doing with the county, typically we pick a point in time and say, we're going to have a general obligation bond sale on this date. And that's the date that we take the best bid, and that's what we go with. Well, we've had a lot of volatility in interest rates across the time period. And what I looked at is, since we last met on September the 11th, here's what your AA bond yields have done. And that is a 90 basis point swing in the course of that 2-month period. So people say, well, what do you think the rate's going to be? Your guess would be as good as mine. So my advice to you would be, at this point, if you're going to go forward, want to go forward fairly quickly, engage bond counsel to derive a timeline so that we can see what schedule we're on. Hire an underwriter, as we did for the county, in order to look at potentially placing this with large bank, institution, et cetera, or taking it to the open market so that we can gauge that. But to do it through that negotiated or placement using an underwriter, so that I don't have a specific point in time where I sell here at the top and the next week the rate drops to that. That would be my recommendation of how you proceed forward from this point.
What was your rate assumption on the number you used? Cash
The
flow.
rate assumption, and I didn't rerun these from our meeting on September the 11th, but I had an underwriter yield on that one of 4%. And we're not going to be at that at this point. It's going to be above that. Well, I say that, but now we're on this downward swing and a huge rush in the market. If all money continues to go to equities and bond yields continue to fall, maybe we're back there by the time we get there in the spring. I don't know.
Thanks.
The county currently has some investments in the bond market. Couldn't we buy that bond?
Could you personally buy it as
County.
Johnson County? That would be a legal question. I believe the answer is no. I think only the treasurer of state has the ability to buy local bonds, and they have to meet certain parameters where there's been no default over 20 years, certain rating. There is a program at the bond bank that alternatively we could go through. Because you're the solid waste district and you have no other anticipated bonding thoughts, we could go through the bond bank. It'll probably be similar. I find them difficult to work with in filling out all of their paperwork and what they want to do. And I do not, and I'm going to separate this right now, I do not recommend this for the county, because you have, in the county perspective, so many other projects and financings that you're going to undertake going forward. You do not want to be within the constraints of the Indiana Bond Bank.
Yeah.
But for this one, we could do that. And again, it would be similar. In that case, you wouldn't hire an underwriter. We would just work with staff and accounting staff to provide the documentation needed for the bond bank, and they'll get you a similar rate. Now, again, the bond bank's really going to want to have you, because Johnson County's debt's going to rate at AA or above. Normally, the things we take through the bond bank are things that we have problems with that won't rate, because we get to pool it together and sell it as a big chunk backed by the bond bank. That is not Johnson County debt, nor is that Johnson County solid waste debt. It stands on its own at a very high rate and sells well.
And is the benefit of that just no underwriter? Is the financial cost of that less expensive?
Yeah, and in that capacity, we don't need an underwriter replacement agent. They're going to bring nothing to the process. You would go directly to the bond bank and just fill out their paperwork. Still would need bond counsel. They would be in a limited capacity because the bond bank has their own bond counsel, and
Sounds like
financial
it's not
advisor,
bad,
that they will then group your debt, your bigger debt, and sell it. as
What he's
bond
got to say.
What's the term? Thank you.
They can do anything out to what you're statutorily allowed, they can go out to that 20 or 90-year amortization as well.
Thoughts from the board? Any questions for the board? Do you have the experts in the room?
Am I right on this? This is about double what we thought this was coming in at, like 1.5 million or so
We
sticks
were
in my mind.
spitballing.
Right.
Yep.
Mhm.
I don't even know if when we budgeted that, if we even had ground plot at the time, like we were just spitballing.
One question I have is, are we committed to this, or what options are there short of doing this, or are there any? I'm asking.
Renew our lease.
Understood on the lease.
You're gonna have to negotiate that, because it ain't gonna be a pretty one.
I know.
Yeah, and
That
it'll,
was-
it'll run up to 125, 130 a year.
On the
Yeah,
Well, now they-
lease.
Yeah, it'll probably
And
be.
your,
And-
your lease renews in
April of
a
25.
year and a half.
And it's,
Sink
and
that cost if you
I'm-
don't do this, or apply it to,
yeah, I'm
Or you
probably
just-
being
or
conservative there.
apply it to
You're
your.
blowing
I
it
may
out.
run it up to
Mhm.
150.
Or do you take 15 years and pay it down 60?
Mhm.
Be debt
Yeah.
free.
For a
Jeff,
bill,
did you say that,
That's what I'm saying.
what would the annual payment be on a 20-year AM schedule?
I think it was about 218. Now, the actual levy would be at about 218, the payment would be about 237,
237,000
Yeah.
a year?
and that's at
I think that'll be higher.
4%.
Huh?
probably higher.
I think that'll be higher.
It'll be hard now, yeah. Be
Uh,
around 6, I'm imagine.
But you're paying half of that in a lease, right?
Yeah.
Is what it amounts to.
And you, when you figured out, I guess you were figuring out all the costs associated with the 2.8 construction, you got the 3 what?
3.135.
that one was at 3.135 million across the 9 years.
Well, hell, if I was 20 years younger, I'd get in the construction business.
No, you wouldn't.
Yeah, I would.
No, you wouldn't. At least you still have hair.
I guess, and the thing, I don't know, that probably is bothersome to me is we always say it only raises the property tax by this amount of money, but it seems like we're just always only raising property tax by this amount of money. And here we are again, looking at levying people's property for something that, and not to be contentious, but something that a very small percentage of those people will be paying even use. And where does that balance out as far as taxpayers and what we receive for that as a taxpayer? I
Right, I'm
guess?
glad you mentioned that, because I jotted a note down, and Jesse, this might be for you. User demographics as far as who in the county uses the service, and what the
Well, really.
numbers are.
Numbers are really difficult because it's hard to gauge. It's not like we have a way to like, we have to stand there and have somebody literally doing that while they're trying to take their materials out. We've always gone by, the amount of increase in materials, so we generally get that information time, January, February, March timeframe for numbers. But the fact is that if you go to move from your house, you only move from your house however many times a year. But when that realtor comes to you and says you need to remove all those materials from your house in order to move from your house, we are the location that you bring all those materials to. So you may only use it once every 10 years, but you may have, let's say you paid me $25 over that entire time in your taxes. I guarantee you the bill you're bringing me is $300, $400 for all of those materials that you are disposing of properly in order to move from your home.
Yeah, I'm just trying to quantify material to what that equates to as far as value add, realizing it's not cash, it's value to the community.
Right. It's the sustainability initiatives. It's the thing that when big corporations come in, they look at, do you have recycling available to all your residents? Well, you absolutely do, because any Johnson County resident can come do it. do you have a way to properly dispose of your materials? By the way, the MS fours have to have that as part of their plan and program for groundwater. To include the county where they're planning and zoning,
Here we go.
we are the one that provides that service. So again, it's really more like, oh, I don't know what I need to do in order to handle this material. That's where we come in.
Yeah, understood. I think the thing I'm trying to reconcile in my mind is you've got a tax increase to the masses for benefit of who, how many, that sort of thing.
Small percent.
I realize the county-wide,
Is anybody in the county can come and utilize our.
they can do that. That's my question is
Well,
who,
again, I mean, no, is
Yeah.
it 165,000 people use me?
no,
We
but
don't
no,
have enough, you know,
no.
I mean, we saw, we.
Yeah,
probably
my
saw
point is- my point is the
350
benefit.
cars on Saturday.
Point is who's the beneficiary and that's hard to quantify because of the things you're saying, is
Yeah.
all I'm saying.
Yeah, so like we had businesses on Friday, we had, you know, it's just like down here, can you put a number to us being able to take the materials and not be sitting on Franklin sidewalks? To help clean out those businesses that don't have the other options, I mean, that's, we always try and help and benefit our communities to their need. So, you know, people in Burgersville, I bring this up all the time, they, you know, they question their services, why do we have all these things, and they don't have, you know, direct recycling at their curb. So they, you know, we tend to get them, they come to us, you know, people in White River Township come to us, you know, but it's hard because they may come to us because it's Christmas and they had a party. But we're able to take their material, you know, so it's very hard to just say this number of people, because the reality is anyone.
One of the things that Commissioner Walls and I talked about the other day was the possibility of co-locating this facility with something that the county might need. And specifically, I asked about community corrections, and I understand that the space, the footprint where community corrections is going is not big enough to also accommodate this. But conceptually, that's one of the things you might think about, is killing two birds with one stone. And overall, of course, you've got to weigh out the costs of not being in control of the lease renewal and expecting a big jump, and the long-term suitability of the building weighed against your decision on the need, the necessity for a new facility and what you're willing to pay for it. That's at the top level. It's the question of co-locating sort of at the middle level of the analysis. One point at a pretty granular level, is I want to echo what was inherent in Mr. Peters' comments. Bond bank is for entities that have a hard time, not for Johnson County.
Bad debt.
Yeah.
Bad debt.
Yes,
In regards to Brian's comment, I certainly understand there's a lot of folks may not use this, but this is really a balance sheet, not an income statement. And really it will affect our income statement, because we'll be paying the county after. We won't be paying lease, you know, for rent, so, I mean, it's gonna, that part will affect our income statement. But for our taxpayers, all the state money goes to us. Is our balance sheet, the county's gonna have a brand new building, that's gonna be worth money. So I understand. It's now-
Yeah, the normal taxpayer, the question that I receive, and I don't know about anyone else up here, but I can't go to Lowe's and shop without being stopped. With questions such as this, and one of them is you know, taxpayers ask me, what am I directly receiving for me paying your salary? That's what they ask me. So when the taxpayer asks me, what am I directly receiving for my property taxes paying this tax? My answer to them is I don't know that you're receiving anything, but some are.
Okay, so for instance, I happen to know, because I know them personally, 2 Trafalgar residents came up and did shredding on Saturday. They brought multiple boxes. If they were to bring that to a location, you're talking $5 or $10 a box to shred those boxes. They brought them to us and paid nothing. On average, that the resident of Johnson County pays $3 to us. And we know that that's really not the case, because we have industries and all these things that pay a lot more. So they just got 10, 15 times the amount in one stop, one time. those same residents come to us 3 times. They come to us every single time we're open. That's how I happen to know where they're located. So.
But that again, 2 people in Trafalgar is a vast minority of who all live in Trafalgar. You know what I'm saying? Yeah.
Just ask for that. So if somebody said that to you, if they came to us in shredding and it's gonna cost $5 a box for them to shred, and they bring me two boxes and that's $10.
My answer to that was I would rather the person using that pay the $5 and me pay 0. As a taxpayer.
But at some.
See, I
point,
deal with these
you are-
people every day, Jesse, and that's what I'm getting at.
If you are truly handling your materials properly by the law, you would come to the solid waste district. Because if you move at all, you're going to have penalties. If you are, trying to shred something personally that you're concerned about,
Yeah,
you're going
but
to come to the district.
I don't disagree with what you're saying. I'm just promoting to you what the taxpayer is saying.
On time, but when you have that, I mean, as we know, because Brown County and Montgomery or Morgan County, they're calling it left and right. They don't have it, and now that Morgan's gone, it's even more so.
Well, one thing I think going forward, I think I'd like to listen to all this go. I think we need to have some way to track who's coming in there, whether it be license plates. However we do that, I think it needs to be, we can quantify where it's coming from. And I think that's something that we'll have to take under consideration as a board. to
I think
figure that out.
anybody that's paying money deserves that.
Yeah, well, you can answer these questions that Mr. Ditmer's asked you about how to quantify who's coming in, where they coming from. Are they all coming from Indianapolis down here to dump their stuff? Nobody can answer that. Well, I mean, but if you track that, then we should have an answer on tracking, what's internally. So
The fact of their license plate, we say, okay.
let's see if they're 41 license plates. I mean, that's what we're gonna see. So we're gonna look at that and we'll tackle that a different day. One thing I want to get to, David, do you have any comments you'd like to throw in here?
No, thank you for asking. It's been very engaging and I appreciate all the questions.
Okay,
Commissioner Walls, I have one other point, just on the time frame as you decide how to approach this. I'm not sure, but I think, and either Lynn or I can verify, I think the renewal notification period in your lease is 180 days, which means you got a year.
Act and
To
build or
to
not.
act and
or-
to get to the point where you're beyond the fork in the road.
well, we're still at the fork. Hopefully, we'll make some headway today.
Lease terminates when
April of
25.
25. And
But it
there
will
is
take-
there is an automatic escalation for holdover. But we don't have an option to renew.
Yeah.
Like,
So
I mean,
those
and that's what
bonds-
prompted this conversation, because every other lease that we negotiated before the last one, quite frankly, there was a different brother negotiating and we always got an option to renew it 5 years. So we just stayed.
Gotcha.
Because we could exercise that option and they never paid any attention. And that's when this last one is, and Commissioner West and I were involved in negotiations. They took a much harder line and I got a feeling they will take a much harder line next time.
Well, and the reality is that we went from just paying, let's say, and I say just, but we paid our rent and everything was included. I mean, everything.
And it's not,
Now we pay our rent and hardly anything is included. We're paying outside of our rent for our costs for maintenance and fixing things and, the snow plowing and the, pulling over of the sidewalk. I mean, I'm sorry, I can't think of what that terminology is.
the common area maintenance.
Good common area maintenance. That
Yeah.
was never in.
And it's a
our-
building that quite frankly, is not all that great. I mean, there's a lot of restrictions that,
How many square feet do we have currently?
Which I think
70.
it's like 10. No, because remember we had it's 10.
Cause I thought it was 6 originally and then
and then.
Yeah,
we
3 years,
had the recycling
35.
Part with the drive.
9,000, I think.
The proposed building was right at the same amount because you asked that question a couple of meetings ago.
Yeah.
It was right, so the proposed was at 9,000 was basically what we have now. That was
If-
right.
To pose a question and maybe for just some thought is if we don't do this, if we don't build a new building and we decide that we're going to lease and or we just let it go away, what
What?
does that the recycling district, what does that pose to
Well-
the taxpayer in Johnson County? Where would they go to be rid of this stuff?
Because this is a statutory created.
No, I'm saying, I'm posing that question though. If this didn't exist, where would the people of Johnson County go?
I don't know where there is, but we're, yeah,
There isn't any place in Johnson County they could go.
But is there any place else? I'm just asking that question. Is there?
They're a tax, they have a solid waste district, that's a tax agency that it handles their residents in the same way
that we wouldn't,
we.
Okay.
yeah, we wouldn't take Shelby County residents, but
Just like we won't take Morgan County's residents to do their hazardous waste or anything else, because why should our residents be paying for Morgan County's residents?
Right, and that's, there again, that's necessity. You're answering the question that I would say a lot of people would ask, what's the necessity? And the fact is, it is a necessity.
Yeah. Yeah.
In Johnson County, that can't be done outside of Johnson County.
So I think this board, I don't, I mean, we can debate this all day long. I think inactive
yeah.
with this board, we
Yeah.
need to make some decisions and
Yeah.
move forward or either stop where we're at, regroup.
And Bill might have,
Those gotta, okay.
yeah, we have a couple other, go ahead, Bill.
One other, sort of just to set the outlier. There's no duty on the landlord's part to re-let to you or under a new lease.
Oh, what? Bill?
No, then relet. Because remember, they don't have to lease to us. We have no option to purchase, so
Oh, yeah.
they could,
Yeah.
because we approached them, if you remember right, Ron, we asked them, let us buy the building. They had.
Yeah,
no
we tried to
interest.
buy it. They didn't.
We
want
tried to
sell
buy it, you know, to avoid all this, and they wouldn't.
Yeah.
They wouldn't do that.
Okay. So-
Well, the other, I mean, some other options you have, of course, would be to a smaller footprint, a cheaper type of construction, pole barn kind of construction, some of those things, you always have those options. We haven't discussed that, and nor do I want to right now, but at least something to think about, I think. And how much money do you have in reserve to put down on it? We talked about,
There's also money in bonds that we, excuse me, in being able to get grants too.
Yeah,
And, you know, I can get, because this is something that the state wants to
Yeah.
see. So there's money available through grant funds in order to show that we are growing our
Yeah.
footprint in Johnson County, but I can't do that. Until.
plus you got, you got over $80,000 a year you're currently paying in rent.
Oh, well,
Which would be an additional sum of money to pay down on the bond, if you, because your amortization schedule was just with the excess levy appeal, or the money it would generate, right?
it's gonna be 230.
The debt levy.
Pay 110 or
I was gonna say,
150 by the end.
We're over six figures now.
Yeah,
We're over six figures.
So you
our
can
rent.
buy that rate down year to year if you wish. But also that money would still be available for operations if you want to
correct.
expand into different operating areas and spend those. You would still have sufficient debt service on the property tax rolls to make payments on the building.
And I think that the question is not whether we need to do the building or not. The question is yes, we do need the building and we need that process. But what's the best way to go about that process? And I think we need to get focused on moving forward and doing the building so that we can start focusing on the process to move forward doing that building. Right now, we're really kind of discussing, do we need a building? Do we need this size of a building? Do we need this? I think we've got to answer those primary questions so we can move forward in whatever direction we're moving. So I think the best thing to do would be to get a consensus of the board on, are we prepared to move forward and build a building of that magnitude? And if we are, then let's figure out a way to do it. And that way our focus goes on one point, and that's to either do it or not to do it.
That's where I was
That
kind of
makes
trying to go.
So I guess if maybe a consensus, Chairman, Mr.
Yeah.
Chairman.
We'll start, Mr. Leskey. What are your thoughts?
I agree with moving forward with building a building. And I think we ought to put a lot of thought into what does that building need to look like? In other words, I don't want to just replace what we've got now and then 10 years from now being sitting here saying we should have built a bigger building. I think we ought to move forward with the optimal building and we ought to move forward with bond financing.
Mr. Dittmers.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I'm also curious as to what options there are on, what all's included in what the quote was and the scope of that project versus maybe what could be done to maybe shave some off of that cost.
Okay,
The construction or structure of the building, and I would agree with that.
Mr. West,
Oh, yeah, I'm all for building it somehow.
Mr. Baird,
I guess
Just
the
have-
question
I'm
then
agreeing.
becomes,
I think we're unanimous on that.
how much money can we?
And then, but now we can focus on that because we know the consensus is let's move forward. Now we got to figure out what the best way is to do that and do it as quickly as possible so we can get started.
I'll give Mr. Lancer.
Now, you got about 107,000 a year going towards rent right now. You're $8,060
Yeah.
a month.
I knew it was over six figures.
Yeah.
And I think
Yeah,
it,
Shows up
For
in-
whatever reason, I was thinking it was 7,500.
that's what it used to be.
Huh?
That's what it used to be.
Yeah.
Before
Yeah,
it
that's what
It
it
escalates next year.
escalates next
We're
year.
gonna be
Yeah.
basically 50% paying toward a building that we own
Or just
instead of
leasing.
leasing one. So I think that part of it's a no brainer.
That logic, I mean, that's how you gotta look at it.
It's
not the
it's now
total.
getting to that other point.
Let me ask you just to Mr. Les, since we're not talking about anything I have a conflict with. Is it possible to design it such as a shell building that it could easily be expanded,
Mhm.
say that the highway
Absolutely.
department, the county?
Engineered steel, yeah, you can.
Can
you
you do
it's
that?
Easy, build a curtain wall in the back and you're good to blow and go. So,
No.
Yeah.
Well, we already up against the wall on the costs. How are you gonna build additional space on it?
no, I
The
think
inability to.
let's look down the road a little bit. If things change, I don't foresee it expanding, but you always want that availability to be able to.
Yeah,
expand.
Well, you always got the ability.
It's easy to-
How many
It's
acres out there?
easy, yeah, it's
220.
easy to design a building to add on to.
Well, that's
one
what I
end or the other. You just have to make that sure that's in your design.
I've never seen a site plan that comes in with any developer who's got a long-term, with all my site plans where they don't have. Here's A, we're doing now, and here's where we go. You save those soft costs into the future. That's all I'm saying. If you're gonna spend the soft cost. Get the whole enchilada, doesn't mean you have to build it all, but you can expand it when you do a site plan, because you're gonna have to do a site plan. On the soft costs of the building.
Just make it expandable if needed.
Okay. So we're going to build a building, go with the general obligations bond. Okay. Okay, is what I heard. Am I good with that? 0.135, 3.135. Is that what it was?
3.135 is the figure.
Is the
Yeah,
figure,
that's based on your,
but I want to start this,
Current design.
I want to start this train down the tracks right now. We can always reduce that bond at letting.
You can reduce. We need to start sufficiently high. So that you
yeah, I'd
get,
use that as your maximum number and then
Yeah.
try to work
Yeah.
in.
are you good with that as a maximum or?
I'm comfortable.
I am too.
Because if we get to the point, we can always reduce that footprint down, which then we can reduce that cost down.
Or you go to a different style construction, which is
Yeah.
easily done too.
I'd like to stay with pre-engineered steel as you would too. It's gonna be longer
But
lasting.
there
It's
are
gonna
other
be-
ways if we have to.
Well,
Yeah.
and to Lynn's point, again, if we could get this all going, and then we know that we can get a grant in a year to expand, because programs have expanded, there are grant opportunities out there, so, I mean, that.
To expand, now, let's look,
Excuse me, to
finance, help offset
finance.
costs. Okay, I just want to make sure we're talking about.
Maybe this portion isn't completely built out, well, then we go after the grant, because there's a need for this portion to be completely built out.
I don't see a lot of interior build out. I mean, you've got some office space by a conference room, little break room, restrooms, and you're gonna be pretty well good. So-
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's pretty well there.
So, okay. What I'm gonna
20
probably,
20 year? 20 year?
20 years, yes, I don't think we're gonna be able to afford anything less than that,
Well, and I don't think 20 years is absurd
no.
for what this is.
As Bill said, you need bond counsel.
Yes,
Yeah.
None of us are. This will
recommendations,
be
Mr.
built
Barrett.
into.
Tom Pittman at Barnes and Thornwood. You're familiar with Barnes.
Yeah.
Known Tom for 30 years. This is
Okay.
I've known him that long, but I'm not as old as Bill, so.
You just walked right down that path. Okay.
I am older.
I've known him that long too, and I'm not as bad as either one of them. I'm
Getting stuff done like this. That's fine. All right. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask, see if Mr. Dittmers will work with Mr. Peters on the bond. Okay, start working with that stuff if you would be willing to do that.
So let's have a formal motion in our record, in our minutes as to what was moving. Well, this is Bill's presentation.
Yeah.
I can't be quiet.
I can't make the motion from the chair.
You can, we probably shouldn't.
There's a lot of things you
You
should do.
can. I move that we move forward with a progressive plan on the building and bond, hiring bond council to continue forward.
Second.
All right,
Got a first and a second.
great.
Brian,
To clarify that a little bit more.
With the goal to issue. The goal
Bond.
to issue general
General
obligation
obligation
bonds
bond.
in the approximate amount of $3.135 million after. the-
and now we're getting really picky about it, aren't we?
I'm just trying to.
Because we'll forget next month. You know that.
That's why I said approximate.
Yeah.
Too though. You might well include in that the search for a benefactor.
Are you volunteering?
No. Well, I'd kick in it a little.
So we have a motion by Barrett, a second by West.
Thank you. Roll call will be Mr. West,
Yes.
Mr. Barrett,
Yes.
Mr. Wall,
Yes.
Mr. Dittmer,
Yes.
and Mr. Lexi.
Yes.
All right, we have a unanimous vote in favor.
Can I bring up one more other item quickly on, if we want to look at underwriters, is that something you will not meet again for what, another month?
2 months.
2
2
months.
months.
2 months.
Is that a motion that we want to pursue underwriter as well?
You do.
You do.
And again, like I say, my biggest thing is the volatility in the market.
Without the other, can you?
And actually, if you
I
would
move
make
to
the
get an
motion
underwriter
as
also.
underwriter / placement agent.
Barrett seconds.
We have a first and a second. Roll call, please.
Aye.
Mr. West,
Aye.
Mr. Barrett,
Yep.
Mr. Wall,
Yep.
Mr. Dittmer,
Yes.
and Mr. Lexi.
Yes.
Thank you. We have a unanimous vote in favor.
How you vote, Connor?
Anything today?
Time to go home.
For an environmental sport, aren't you?
Well, I think, we've got internal, we got some new business. So we got the building up there. That was a
What
long
did you ask me
building
to
up
do,
there.
Kevin?
Pardon me?
What did you ask me to
Spearhead
do
Kind of spearhead this with
with
the numbers, guys.
doing that with?
This would be super
Give it to
quick
Jim.
because,
Thank you. You have exactly 5 minutes.
yep, nope. I had already spoken to Councilman Dittmers. We recognized that, as you all know, we go over internal controls pretty regularly. And it's one of the facets of being on this board, as it is as an elected official to your other positions. And so I handed him our internal controls and went over some of the basics that we have for him to be able to be in alignment with our fiscal and internal control policies. The biggest thing, as you know, we've mentioned, which is why the council member is never a signator on our checking, is of course because he can handle our vouchers, looking over the vouchers. And so this is why we have made the council member that position within our internal controls. And that is something that we made a resolution on, a few years ago, and we continue to have with us. So as there will most likely be some need for that to come in the near future, I will speak with him in regards to vouchers and any changes. But in the meantime, nothing has been changed within our internal controls over the past year. So I didn't want you to think that there were changes other than the fact that he had not had copies of our internal controls yet.
I will read it thoroughly and in great detail.
Great, thank you. Please let me know if you have any questions.
Enthusiastically.
Yeah,
And I had one question in terms of reminders. If you'll recall, we have an open seat because we're a 7-member board, and my recollection was wished us to reach out to Bargersville. Is that correct? Because we will not meet again until January. Is that?
Wait until
still-
after tomorrow.
Okay,
Yes, that's
okay.
what I thought it was for me to wait.
We're gonna wait until after the
But it was
election
Barger-
cycle.
It was
Okay.
Bargersville, correct?
Yes.
Is that what
Yes.
you wished us to do? Reach out for an appointee from Bargersville?
Mhm.
Still, okay.
I think they're gonna have a little bit more input in it than.
And I'll actually probably reach back out to you before I do that.
Mhm. Okay,
And then the last thing was just the board meeting calendar. I believe that, it's the same that it's always been. The only difference is that according to your calendar, commissioners, you meet on November 4th next year. So we have once again aligned our calendar with yours.
Okay.
So is there any? Yes, yep. Are we all okay with those? We just need to,
2 o'clock.
approve those, don't we?
let's
Yes.
ask about time. Does time work or do we want to leave it at the same time during the day or move it later? I don't think we can move it any earlier because it's usually on our meeting days and they're pretty volatile some days.
These days are just really tough for us to get to this meeting on time.
Yeah, because, well. we
Yeah,
got-
time
we got a
goes.
little hiccup to see.
You tell me.
Admins or executives run us over usually. I mean, for the commissioners anyway. So I was thinking maybe if we could start at 2. Would give us just a little extra time if that works for.
Does that work? David, how's that work for you?
That'd be fine.
Okay, thank you.
Because it is tough to make it here.
Yeah, you need a motion.
Okay, so we'll need a
Approve it,
motion
because we
then,
gotta publish that. Since we're not
Okay.
meeting yet.
Motion to move our solid waste meetings to 2 o'clock PM.
And have meetings on the date as circulated.
And date as circulated. Yes. Okay.
We got first and a second. Roll call vote, please.
That was Mr. Baird first.
Mr. Baird and then Mr. Dittmer seconded that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. West,
Aye.
Mr. Baird,
Me,
Mr. Wall,
Yes.
Mr. Dittmer,
yes.
and Mr. Lexi.
Aye.
I thank you. We have a unanimous vote in favor of that.
That was for Mr. Barrett, just so you know.
All right.
Grammatically correct.
Why did you change name?
Do we have any public comment? Jeff, you're not gonna say any public, are you? Good, okay, now I just look for a motion.
Do we need a roll call on adjournment?
No.
No.
You do not. Technically, you can just walk out.
We have a motion to say we're adjourned.
We are done. Thank you, Connor, for putting up with us.